and welcome to lesson number 51 in our current micro series in lockdown 3. It's the 23rd of March 2021 and today we're going to be looking at study number 51 in the book of 60 by Feuillard. It says it is a study for arpeggios on 3 strings. Now really it means broken chords because they are always a permanent location for the 3 notes of a chord, rather than what we might traditionally imagine an arpeggio going up and across in different linear patterns. And potentially you could even pop your bow down and play 3-note chords. Etc. So you can really sort of feel those shapes in your hand, a nice strong left hand there. And there are a few places where the left hand is challenged, where you bar with a little finger, for example in bar 18. There's a few places where that 4th finger barring is required, which is always harder because it's obviously a weaker little finger and it needs straightening across the strings, flattening like that. Other areas for the left hand to worry about, let's have a look. There is an enharmonic change towards the end. You have an A flat minor arpeggio, or broken chord. Then this C flat changes to a B natural, call it the same note. I've done a substitution shift, so I've now got a 1 on that, and it's going to become E major. It could catch you unawares, especially as it goes over a line break. Another place where I would make a small adjustment, a couple of adjustments actually in fingering. One is at bar 30 into 37, no, 38 into 39. So we have this augmented triad here. And then we're going into A flat major, but rather than moving the 4 to the 3, you've already got the bottom 2 notes with stretch. I would use the 3rd finger for that A flat and then swap in the following bar as it is indicated. That's pretty much it actually for the left hand. What you will find disconcerting are the bow patterns. There are, as you will see, 7 variations you can select for the bowing. That would be quite a challenge to do all of those. And in terms of the easiest ones, the first one is just separate bows. So you could always do that initially in order to be confident about your left hand notes after your pizzicato chord practice. Also variation 3 is in paired slurs, so that again would be fairly straightforward. Number 2 is quite nice because this one you flow through to the end of the bow, then separate, then you will come back. So that's quite a nice one, I think, in terms of us, swinging from one end to the other. Anything else in there? Really, I think that variations numbers 4, 5 and 6 are, all they're doing is that 2 of the pairs will be slurred and 2 notes will be separate, and they're just amending which those 2 notes would be, which is okay. I don't find a great deal of satisfaction out of those. And the 7th one is where you are trying to then always slur over into the next quaver beat. So we'd have something like you can see I haven't looked at that yet. But the difficulty potential with that one would be that when you cross the bar line where you're going to be slurring into the next pattern, you can see that going from bar 2 to 3, a little bit awkward because the pattern that works for a different bow pattern may not work so well for variation number 7. Food for thought. So you might need to change your solutions at the end of a bar. Now, casting aside all those 7 variations, which I think is going quite a long way away from what we're really looking at, the study itself presents us with more than enough material without those variations, because on first glance you might just think, oh, it's just different chords across these strings and they look like the patterns must be the same or very similar. In actual fact, there are 11 lines of study, 11 staves there, and there are 11 different bow patterns. So every single line is a different bow pattern, a different configuration of 3 neighbouring strings. I have printed out this bow pattern, which I'm just going to show to camera, so you could always take a still shot if you want to observe these. So here we have, I'll just show you actually coming back a little bit like so, the 11 different bow patterns. And that from one to another, there's generally speaking maybe only one alteration between one variant and the next, one line and the next, but occasionally you have to watch out. So when we introduce the use of the A string on the 4th line, you'll need to really raise that upper arm, and it feels like a real swing up in order to be able to get into the new pattern and shape. And there are a couple of other places you may be taken by surprise. At the end of line 5 going into line 6, the bow pattern actually ends and begins on the same note, so that we have in bar 5 the pattern would be, I'm just doing open string patterns, and it may slightly disrupt you if you don't realise why it feels awkward, because you're staying on the same string to change direction there into a new pattern. The last 4 lines consistently actually do that, but by the time it becomes consistent it's not a problem. Okay, so that's pretty much the coverage that you really do need to clock on to these pattern changes. It is quite difficult to maintain good tone throughout, but let's give it a go. And some of these chords are dubious in the path of modulation. It really is quite an endurance, and to try and keep the hand pressed down so much throughout there, so that actually by the time one comes to that clamped 4th finger in bar 43, I must admit it's quite tiring. I think there's one other thing I was thinking was probably worth noting. Watch out for the whole tone shift back at the end of bar 36 into 37. Have a go and you'll find some of them feel freer than others.